Okay, I'd like to call the meeting to order. It's about 5 after 2, and the first thing on our agenda this afternoon is the adoption of the agenda. So if I could have a resolution for that adoption, please.
Resolve the agenda for the meeting be adopted as circulated with the noted additions. Communication for action 7.11, Manitoba Good Roads Association Road and Ditch Maintenance and Safety. 7.12, Lord Selkirk School Division's Ruth Hooker School Diverse Literacy Event. And 43 and 45 Donald Street Subdivision and Variation Order. 15.3 Subdivision letter from Craft.
Okay, thank you for that. Can I have a mover, please? Councillor Boulanger moves, Councillor Bazarovic seconds. Are there any other additions or deletions from our agenda for today? Go ahead, Councillor Strang.
Madam Mayor, I would like to add whether we get information or give direction to administration on an email that we had in regards to Coronation Road.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, anything else from any council members? Hearing and seeing nothing, I have a mover, I have a seconder, I'll call the question. All those in favor, opposed, and that is carried. We have one set of minutes that we will be adopting, and that was from our regular meeting on May 13th. If I can have the resolution, please.
Resolved that the minutes of May 13th, 2025 regular meeting of council be adopted as presented.
Can I have a mover, please? Councillor Horvis, Councillor Spicer seconds. Any discussion or corrections or changes to those minutes from May the 13th? Hearing and seeing none, I will call the question. All those in favor, opposed, and that is carried. Okay, we will, do we need a resolution to open the public hearings?
Yes.
Okay, so I'll read that first and then I'll read the explanation.
Resolved that the regular meeting be adjourned and the public hearing be open for bylaws 6-2025, bylaw 7-2025, bylaw 8-2025, bylaw 9-2025, and bylaw 10-2025.
One mover, please. Councillor Sutherland, second. Councillor Strang. Any other discussion? Hearing and seeing none, call the question. All those in favor, opposed, carried. Before we start the process for the public hearings, I just have a little note here that I would like to read. Good afternoon, everyone. Council wishes to thank you for taking an interest in what is happening in your municipality by attending today. The purpose of these public hearings is to receive representations from the municipality as well as any persons who also wish to make representation on the borrowing bylaws. We will first hear presentations from the CAO and then from those present who wish to make representation. This will start with anyone who would like to speak in favor, followed by those who are opposed to or object. At the end of these presentations, the CAO will have an opportunity to respond. Outside the council chamber, you will find a sign-in sheet for today's public hearing. If anyone intends to make a presentation for any of the hearings scheduled, please record the necessary contact information on the appropriate sign-in sheet. If you have not signed in, please do so now in order to have the opportunity to speak to council. At the end of each presentation, the members of council may ask for clarification from the speaker on any fact or issue, but will not enter into any debate. At your opportunity to speak, please begin by stating your full name and address for the record. Person speaking must address the chair. If you have questions, they should raise them in their presentations to the chair. Thank you. And with that, I'm going to ask our CAO to give us an overview of the borrowing bylaws that we are looking at today and the public hearings that we are having.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Today, the Rural Municipality of St. Clements is proposing 5 borrowing bylaws for 2025 that will advance the critical infrastructure projects totaling about $21.5 million in capital investments. Through strategic grant funding and fiscal management, the RM will only need to borrow $11.025 million while securing $9.5 million in provincial and federal grants. These investments will enhance the road infrastructure, expand recreation facilities, improve waste management, strengthen our water system, and upgrade the drainage infrastructure. Each one of the bylaws that have been listed here, we have a PowerPoint presentation as well as what we provide as a borrowing bylaws overview that's available on our website. That'll be available throughout after this public hearing. We are open to further questions related to this before the second reading of the bylaws. So today we're doing first reading and walk you through this process. What we'll talk about is first the 5 bylaws. So there are 5 proposed borrowing bylaws that are being put forward. And they are representing, that will be then, once that read, will be given to the municipal board for approval. So as part of any borrowing, the municipal board does review our borrowing request and verifies that against our capacity to pay and if we have the appropriate authority to be able to borrow those bylaws. So going forward with the bylaws, I need to note that there's a bit of a process that happens with borrowing with the province of Manitoba that's required as legislator between the municipalities. The first step is you get borrowing authority and then you go out and do the projects. So some of the projects, some of the bylaws that are being put forward today are the result of projects that have been completed or are about to be completed so that we can finish up the borrowing. We do the interim financing in between there, and the intent is that once the final project is complete, then you know what the actual costs are, and that's what you go to borrow. So first you get borrowing authority, and then you go to borrow. So we're going to talk about several of those as we go through today because of how we got to all 5 of these. And so with that, and I wanted to also identify, there are some new ones that are being put forward as part of this year's budget, which was bylaw 8 and 10. So bylaw 8 and 10 are have been approved as part of the budget process and then are being put forward for the public hearing. And that's for the landfill facility as well as for the upgrade or the additional works for phase 3 of our water and sewer infrastructure project that was started back in 2021. So projects associated with bylaws 6, 7, and 9 were introduced in previous budgets, and as mentioned, they were also previously had borrowing authority in some cases. And we'll go through that in detail. So to start with, bylaw 6 is to authorize the expenditure and funding borrowing to complete the construction and road remediation works. So that's, we're dealing with previously pulverized roads that were existing in the municipality that were previously hard surface roads, and council in 2023 made a commitment to upgrade those and committed to borrowing $3.5 million to do that. This is the process of that, and I'll talk about that in more detail. Bylaw 7 is to authorize the expenditure and borrowing funds to establish the municipal community recreation facility in St. Clements, in South St. Clements, and that's the recreation facility where we received ISEP funding. Original application was made in 2018. We finally received the approval in 2022, started construction at the end of 2023 through 24, and we're near finishing completion of that project and are now finishing up the borrowing associated with it. The bylaw 8 is to the expenditure of funds to expand the Lebo land facility. As mentioned and has gone through the budget process, the Lebo landfill is at near end of life for the cell that we have there. It was a regional landfill that was built, I think, in 2016. Am I correct, Madam Mayor?
I believe it may have even been a year or 2 earlier.
2014. 2014-16, it was a regional facility, and as part of that regional facility, now we're trying to look at adding another cell to it, and we were able to get some grant funding to help with that. And then we have bylaw 9, which is the expenditure and borrowing funds to complete the construction and the improvement of the water control works. Apologize for the typo there. And the water control works, this is related with drainage projects, as you can see on the map. And behind Councillor Spicer, these were the drainage projects that were identified back in 2018 and then moved forward in 2020. And with that projects, many of those drainage projects were completed, and now that they're completed, we're looking at finishing up the borrowing budget part. It does call it water control works, but it's mainly associated with many of the drainage works that were needed to be dealt with throughout the municipality. And finally, the final one is bylaw 10, which is the expenditure of funds to borrow the construction of the water reservoir, river pipeline, as well as well field for the South St. Clements utility system. So this is the South St. Clements utility system that was established, and long-term strategy was established back in 2017-18, and then further expanded on in 2020. And in 2021, we started the construction of much of those works, and it was done in 3 phases. Phase 1 was to bring in certain projects, and I'll talk about all that and we'll get through each one. So moving on to the next, each one individually. So as mentioned, bylaw 6, which is the road remediation work and borrowing. This is to finance the road remediation projects within the municipality. $3.5 million was identified to be borrowed. Right now, the interest rate on all of these projects has been identified as identified by the province of Manitoba to use 6%. Obviously, once it's gone through the board, municipal board for approval, we will go out to the market and then see what we will be able to get. Most likely, it'll be less, not the same as what you get on home borrowing, because it's a guaranteed amount over 20 years. And so right now, we're basing it on 6%, where the annual payments will be about $305,146, and it's levied through the special mill rate on the rateable properties. This has already been determined. It's already been put into the budget. It was already identified in the budget back in 2023 as an anticipated expense. And in 2023, council froze the mill rates, showing that they wouldn't have to increase any taxes in order to pay for any of these funds. And this was related with the process, as well as council freeze the mill rate at the same rate of taxes in 2024, and then in this year, council reduced it, as you know, by 13% due to the major reassessment that occurred, as well as the high school taxes that council felt it was important to reduce some of the burden on the taxpayers. So scope, upgrading and resurfacing of deteriorated roads. So these were roads that were deteriorating over time, and some of them had been pulverized and converted from hard surface back to gravel roads some 15, 20 years ago in some cases, and some were less than that. Now we have an asset management plan with road works, and so we're looking at not getting ourselves into that situation again. And hence, council decided to move forward on upgrading certain roads. Enhancing road safety and accessibility is one of the main reasons, as well as supporting economic development through improved infrastructure. Has always been the case when we look at our road infrastructure. So as mentioned, in 2023, council made that commitment to complete the previous hard surface roads that were returned to gravel due to deteriorating conditions. The commitment was for $3.5 million in borrowing, which would not impact the mill rate. The payments were accounted for since the 2023 budget discussions. In 2024, Harold and George were reconstructed, and in 2025, Donald will be reconstructed, bringing the total cost to $3.5 million. The details of the Donald Road and those construction projects are in our 2024 budget, as well as our 2025 budget. So next, that covers bylaw 6 and the intent of borrowing for that for $3.5 million. So there was no other grants associated with that part of the project, and they were directly related with borrowing. Next is the authorize the borrowing for the establishment of the municipal community recreational building. So this was the South St. Clements Rec facility, which had been planned and discussed for some 20+ years in the RM again and an application was made for a Canada Infrastructure Grant in 2018. That application was approved in 2020, and we were authorized to bring forward and do this. There were some other things that went on along during that time, and I'm going to discuss some of those as we go through this. So the project cost, not what was originally anticipated, but what the final cost was $6,222,050. What was anticipated as the cost that went for the final approval in 2022. And a grant has been identified from the federal government of $2,045,044.10, while we have a grant from the province of Manitoba from the province of Manitoba was the grant of $2,045,044.10, and from the federal government was $2,454,000 $778.40, while the municipality would be looking at $2 million. Again, this was identified previously. The borrowing authority had already existed. So now what it is the completion of the project, which we're anticipating this summer, and as part of that completion, we need to go out and do the borrowing. The final borrowing amount we anticipate will probably less than what we had requested for. We had changed our borrowing authority to $2 million, so that's what we're going for at this point. And then once it's approved, we will see whether it turns out to be 1.8, 1.6. We know the project is under budget. We know the project is being built in 2025 and 2024 at estimate dollars that were estimated in 2018 dollars. The reason being, we did a design build and we're able to institute a lot of cost savings as part of the project, and that's what we're anticipating is going to even bring it further lower than what was anticipated originally. And I need to note that every other ISAC project has gone up considerably percentage-wise due to the amount of time it takes to get the federal approval, and the municipalities are usually having to pay that gap. So the repayment of the annual payments will be approximately $174,316.11, and this will be a general levy, as municipal recreation is generally levied. The scope is a multi-purpose space for community events, sports and recreation amenities, programs for all ages. And so I wanted to talk about that original funding and that why I highlighted that so much. So originally, back in 2018, when this project was submitted, there was a request for a borrowing authority, and that borrowing authority was for $4.35 million, because what it included was site works and the building. The building was considered as a request to the Canada Infrastructure Program, and the rest was site works, landscaping, signage, parking, bringing in a road, bringing in sewer to that location from just a little further down south from the tracks. And a federal grant was sought. There was 6.3 at that point identified for investing in Canada Infrastructure Program for the building construction. 6.3 was identified for the building construction, and another somewhere around 200 and some thousand was identified for some of the site works that would qualify under the federal program. So, but the RM through submission of programs and as well as some of the work that was happening in the province of Manitoba received an unrestricted $2.7 million disaster prevention grant. And so what that was the site works to complete, allowed us to do the site works. So what that was a climate resiliency grant received in 2021 for $2.7 million. So that included landscaping, drainage, parking, and road access. Some of the same things that were needed. So part of the project for this was to do some of the landscaping work and the drainage. So the Guns Creek drainage was needing to be addressed. So the drainage of Guns Creek required a storm retention pond. The storm retention pond was what we received the funding for from the province of Manitoba, so that reduced our cost because we had anticipated that might be a cost. Our council had anticipated at that time with the cost for building around the activity center and then to deal with the drainage. So as part of that, that was able to be taken, and that meant we required less funding. And so in 2022, I think it was, or 2022, we went back to the province of Manitoba and then we readjusted the borrowing authority that by reducing it by $2.35 million. So we took $2 million and said, we still need that, and we awaited for grant approval for the building itself, but we identified that we needed we took the 2.35 and said, we can now take that borrowing authority and apply it to other things. And what was it identified for? Phase 1 of the utility infrastructure project. So phase 1, where there was issues identified for the Lockport treatment plant, that was a significant multi-million-dollar expense that was coming to the RMA St. Clements. It was to reduce the expense of that because the twin force mains had been identified that had already been 2 to 3 years delayed, and with the delay there was construction inflation continually happening. So the municipality made a decision to put that money towards the construction of that project. As as well as the province of Manitoba came back and said that they would also put $2 million towards the expansion of the water treatment plant at the same time. So there was an opportunity to take advantage of that and look at the expansion of that to look at in further densified areas how we can recover those costs. So that allowed us to take $2.35 million to do phase 2. There were 3 phases identified, and at that point, those phases were identified and an application was made also to the province of Manitoba for additional funding, because this was our funding for the Manitoba Water Services Board applications. Because the twin force mains were originally applied for under the Building Canada Fund, and it didn't look like it was going to happen, and there wasn't any opportunity for getting that infrastructure dollars. So we applied for with Manitoba Infrastructure, or Manitoba Water Services Board, who gave us 50% funding on doing both the water treatment plant and the sewer lines. So that gave us phase 1 of the project. So purpose, so at this point all we're doing is going for the $2 million on bylaw 7 to finish up this project. Bylaw 8, as I mentioned, this was the new bylaw. Last year it was identified that we had a significant risk, somewhere $3 to $4 million risk of having to upgrade our Lebo landfill. And this was a regional landfill, requires significant other environmental mitigation plans than you do with others. This has been a long-serving landfill, as mentioned, and it services a lot of communities, as I will mention. So the project cost was identified at $4 million. So the province of Manitoba gave us a grant on this, and then we'll talk about that. That was the GRO grant, and we applied for that last year, and we were able to get the grant that came forward early this year that said that they would pay 50% of the funding. As a matter of fact, they've already forwarded the $2 million because we are at a significant risk, because if we don't get the landfill expanded by the end of this before the winter season comes, there's a significant impact on the ability to continue to provide the same level of service on that landfill. And so what we're looking at is interest rates of 6% per year, repayment of $174,000, and $174,369.11 funded through the solid waste. Again, only $2 million for us, while $2 million is coming from grants. So it's increased landfill capacity is what it will give us as a future demand, and it will implement environmental sustainable waste management practices that the province is heavily pushing forward, and enhances the service efficiency for all our residents and in the surrounding areas. The St. Clements, Arm St. Clements is implementing this significant regional initiative. This has been a regional initiative and it supports it's a Class 1 regional landfill, and what we're adding is an additional cell to it, which will give us another 10 plus years or more of capacity. The landfill serves as a critical infrastructure component within the WMR, and that's when it was originally in 2014-15. It was first installed, and it needed, as part of that, was to support the metro region, and the plan at that time from the province of Manitoba was to reduce the number of landfills throughout the province, so that we had many of these Class 1s, which we manage our infrastructure. I have water, it's okay.
No one?
Okay, the Lebo Class 1 regional landfill it's not just a regional initiative, it also addresses waste management for multiple municipalities and communities. Right now, it includes the landfill, and tipping fees are collected from Broken Head Ojibwe Nation, First Nation, the arm of Lac Dabani, the arm of Broken Head, the town of Beausejour, as well as there are other RMs also looking at utilizing this facility once it expands. The new cell would enhance the capacity by over 10,000 tons annual waste, and will be integrating the best practices for environmental protection, as well as expand our ability to manage leachate, and with a proper modern drainage system and better security around the overall landfill. An application was made, as mentioned, to the Manitoba GRO grant and was approved for 50% funding this year for $2 million. So our cost on this $4 million is only 50% of that cost. So that covers our landfill project. The next is bylaw 9, which is the water control works and drainage projects. And so as mentioned, this was to authorize the borrowing for the completion and improvement of water control works, specifically drainage projects. That's what it was for. For all the drainage projects, mostly in the north and the south, with some parts of the south. Guns Creek was one of the large ones, and then the rest was throughout various areas where we had significant projects. And with that, when we received the Guns Creek, which was identified in the original 3.25, was it 3.25 million? Or 3.5, yes, 3.52 million. In the original 3.52 million, we received the funding for the Guns Creek, so that part had to be taken out because we could only spend money for what they were originally borrowed for. And so what was left was 1.5. What that did was it released a certain amount of funds, which are also used to not have to, we used our borrowing authority and we didn't have to go and went back to the municipal board and said, let's deliver on our utility infrastructure. So that put another $2.some million. I'll cover that in detail later. So the repayment on this $1.5 million over 20 years at 6% will be $132,956.45. And this will be as part of a general levy because it was part of water control works that supports the entire municipality. Enhancement of the existing drainage infrastructure was the scope, mitigation of flood risks, and as you can see, as part of this, there was a significant reduction in our impact of flooding that has occurred in the last few years since all these drainage projects have come in place. Obviously, it's not all complete, and there's still always drainage issues needed in the RM, but this went a long ways where council was elected and they had made a decision to put a significant amount of money towards drainage and address these long-standing issues. And it was to mitigate these flood risks. The improvement of agricultural land usability is also another major part of it. So here I walk through the details. So 2018, it was identified as $3.52 million. Funds needed after the Guns Creek was 1.5. So fully funded, which was 2.7, which was no cost to us, no matching funds for the climate resiliency grant, which was again used because there was some doubling up of those monies that we needed for the drainage works. And the Guns Creek was originally part of the water control plan. So since there was, the grant helped us to offset 2.7 million in borrowing, which revised the borrowing requirement to the new total of $3.525 million. In addition to this, there were some parts, there was probably another $800,000 to $900,000 of drainage works that were done through existing operating dollars as it was spread out over multiple years. And so that helped us to reduce the amount of borrowing that we actually needed. The result freed up another $2 million in borrowing, and with that borrowing, that went with the other 2.5 to help us pay for the first phase of our utility infrastructure, which was a long-standing utility infrastructure need. So, moving on, then we get to our last one, which is our major utility infrastructure project. So, this is phase 3 of the project. This was to finance the construction of the water reservoir, well field, and river pipeline crossing from South St. Clements for our utility system. So this is part of our utility system, fully funded as part of the utility system, just like our sewer and water are. So this project cost is estimated at $6 million. And this was done through engineering, working with WSP as our engineering company, and funded through engineering studies that were completed with Water Services Board in previous years, as this was a multi-phase approach working with the province of Manitoba towards our utility projects. So this is our 25 to 50-year plan on the expansion of water and sewer in our municipality to support development, economic development in those types of scenarios. So funding sources are coming $3 million from the province of Manitoba. Municipal reserves will pay for $1 million at this point. We will know more when right now we're just going for the borrowing authority. and we'll decide whether we need that much or less, because reserves are what helps to pay for this utility infrastructure. Those reserves come directly from connection and utility fees. So those reserves come from all of those, so people that are paying for their utility bills, so that's a utility, as part of the utility, it pays for itself. The utility billing allows it to help do its own borrowing, and that borrowing determines what the rates are on individuals who use that water utility. And so the repayment details are to be determined and authorization after the municipal board. So what we're going for right now is the municipal borrowing authority. So enhanced water supply reliability, support for the community growth and development. So it was identified, there was housing needs assessments completed, there was an assessment of the kind of development that was happening, what was happening in East Selkirk, what was happening in Lockport, what was happening in between, what was happening in the north, where do we need this type of infrastructure, how will it precipitate the level of growth. This aligns with the municipal planning for the development plan that the municipality approved, and aligns with the secondary plans in those communities, which aligns with the kind of development that's needed, which is what we're seeing, and that's helping us to manage our taxes as we've seen. And so for fire protection, as well as it also provides for fire protection. The more housing you get, the more you need other types of fire protection, like fire hydrants that are also installed as part of this, as well as to help find ways to have our tanker trucks fill up on different locations. And so what was the project's purpose? To improve water quality and reduce household reliance on individual water softening systems, address long-standing resident concerns related to hard water in East Selkirk and beyond. And the project was as part of the RM's critical infrastructure priorities that the council had identified for multiple years. We were able to proceed faster and with a reduced financial strain due to the $2.3 million savings from the activity center, $2 million saved from the water control works. These savings freed up about $4.3 million to initially get this project going. As you know, council, you may remember back in 2020, you were seeing fee or price increases going up by about 30% at construction inflation while the project waited for funding approvals. This allowed us to move quickly and reduce the expenses overall. So the East Treatment Water Treatment Plant provides water services at the present for over 800 residents, schools, and some commercial businesses, and is prepared for additional commercial businesses. The water quality meets all standards stated in Canadian Drinking Water Quality Guidelines. That's a reverse osmosis system through upgrades and the softened water that's been added as part of this, so that it's at a high quality level as any large municipality. The plant has been designed to serve a future population of approximately 2,760 residents. And that's important to note, because once these systems get built, the idea is how much have you invested in it, and that's how you distribute the cost for connections and everything else to all those individuals, because as a utility, they must recover all costs associated with that construction. The design incorporates capacity for expansion of potable water for the East Selkirk Water Treatment Plant for residential and as well as for future expansion to industrial and further commercial developments in the Lockport area. And the upgrade will also provide for fire protection in all those areas. And the project is considered a regional water infrastructure, and as part of receiving funding from the province of Manitoba, every project that's an infrastructure project must also look at and be prepared to be able to be at a regional level. There's been ongoing discussions with the RM St. Andrews, who does not have water and would have a significant cost, who would then pay us to get connection to that water that allows us to further expand this. And that's why there's an opportunity to look at a future well field and all those, so that as you can, there's a general savings for the region, just like a regional landfill, regional sewer, regional water, all makes sense because it reduces general costs and it brings more people to share in that cost, because the utilities most often need to pay for themselves. As an example, the landfill, there's a significant amount of tipping fees that help to reduce the overall expenses related to the landfill. The project is considered regional water because there's a possibility of construction of pipeline to provide water in the future to the Arbor St. Andrews. And it's already been identified where it could logically go, and then provide water to further densified locations in Arbor St. Andrews, and making less reliance on wells and groundwater for those areas, which then helps to the words escape me, is the regenerate the groundwater in those areas because there's less people driving water up from it. The RN's proactive approach, as you can see, demonstrates strong fiscal management and leveraging grant opportunities to reduce the debt burden and accelerate these key infrastructure projects. The leveraged grant funding from the Climate Resiliency Program, Canada Infrastructure Program, and Manitoba Water Services Board grants helps us deliver this. Used operating funds and existing staff resources and reduces borrowing. So it reduces our borrowing costs, and we've also used operating funds wherever we could. Enabled reallocation of funds to priority infrastructure projects. And so the question is, are we prepared for this thing? Yes, it was identified in the 2025 plan that we are prepared with the borrowing capacity remaining. As you can see, we have, as legislative requirement for all municipalities, you can't borrow 7% more than 7% for your borrowing capacity. We are only using up 2.56% of that borrowing capacity with a significant amount remaining for future borrowing. And as to the 20% of our ability to pay from our revenues that come in, the payment capacity, we're only using up 8.73 with 11.27 still available, showing that there's a strong fiscal strong fiscal capability. But debt is not only paid through just revenue.
Excuse me, folks. We're still going through our presentation, and you'll have an opportunity to speak if you want to speak amongst yourselves. If you wouldn't mind going out in the hallway, please.
Sure.
Thank you.
Okay, so the 2025 debt payments, as shown here, and it was identified in our 2025 budget plan. It shows that not all debt payments are paid. So some people may think that, oh, because we're borrowing, we're paying for that debt through taxes. No, only 35% comes through taxes. Utility rates, as I mentioned earlier, for utility projects, that's where the debts are paid for their utility projects. Local improvement districts is also fairly significant, where you'll have districts established where you're collecting funds specifically for those districts. Some of those have been established in East Selkirk when the original infrastructure was put in place here. There was local improvement districts established, so those tax dollars, that collection of that was put on those individual people's taxes only as part of that as a local improvement district. The same thing happened in the south for all these sewer lines that were put in there, that were put in as local improvement as in the Old River Road. And any other sewer line or lines that were put in are charged back through connection fees. And then finally, the gas tax grant. So a lot of our projects are sometimes funded through the gas tax, and there's stipulations because this is federal funding given to the municipalities, and then specific dollars are put in according to whether it can be, and that's where we use it to fund for certain roads and other infrastructure where we can do borrowing or capital costs for those kinds of projects. But they must adhere to the federal requirements for the gas tax requirements. So that's to explain for the debt. So I'm open for questions, Council.
Okay. Questions from council?
If there's no further questions from Council, Madam Mayor, we can open it up for delegations.
Okay, thank you for that. Thank you for the presentation. There's some good information for all of our residents in that presentation. And as you said earlier, it will be on our website tomorrow morning, probably.
Oh, it's available right now.
Right now, okay.
And there's also a budget bylaws overview document that was provided, which kind of covers all these things as well in another format. Just most of it is repeated, but we're trying to enhance our communication, and we're learning as we go along, which is we're trying to provide as many formats as we can.
Okay, thank you for that. Okay, I do only have one or two names on my list actually for bylaws 9 and 10 of 2025, and that's Sue and Ian Hailstone. So who's going to present first?
Well, we'll just come up together. I think we really have the same things to say, so.
Okay, and if you could just state your name and location for the record, please.
Ian Hailstone, Lot 6, Dorothy Cove.
And Sue Hailstone, 6 Dorothy Cove, Boston Harbor.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead, sorry.
Can you explain how you justify borrowing $3,487,382.20 for a reservoir intended to supply water to current and future taxpayers who already have access to the same aquifer, either through private wells or the East Selkirk Water Treatment Plant, when there are taxpayers in the north of the municipality that have no access to a reliable water source or aquifer on their property. I have 4 questions to ask. We'll do them one at a time.
I think as the mayor explained to you, this is a public hearing. As part of the public hearing, you'll be able to ask your questions to the chair. After your presentation is complete, the chair will ask me to respond. So if that's your first question, you can move on to your second question and finish your presentation. As the chair had, excuse me, sir, as the chair had mentioned, this is not a debate. This is a public hearing associated with these borrowing bylaws. If you have specific questions related to the presentation and those borrowing bylaws, I'll attempt my best to answer them, and if I can't, I will attempt my best to get the information. That's what we.
Is
that's
there a
how it works.
timeline on that, or?
Is that one of your questions, sir?
No.
Okay, then I'll answer that after.
Do you want to just continue on with your questions, Ian? And once you get, as you said, you have 4 questions to ask. If you want to bring them all forward, we'll do our best to answer them. And as our CAO has said, if he can't answer them now, we'll make sure that you get the information as soon as possible.
Okay, well, it's just I've been waiting for answers to questions for a month and a half that I haven't got, so that's why I'm
I'm
asking.
aware.
Number 2, why aren't the current and future residents of Lockport and South St. Clements expected to drive 13 kilometers to the East Selkirk truck fill when in the 2022 decision paper, the Water and Waste Coordinator as well as Council recommends that residents of Grand Marais, Balsam Bay, and North St. Clements drive up to 4 times that distance to access water. Number 3, why is council borrowing millions to service the south end of the municipality with another water source without conducting a survey as there was in the north of the municipality? What is the difference between the north and the south property owners? Number 4, why would council approve spending millions on water infrastructure for Lockport when the most up-to-date Stats Canada population census states Lockport's population increased by 4.5% to 301, while Grand Marais population increased by 95.8 to 601. Yet not spending $60,000 in 2022 to drill a new well and truckload facility in Balsam Bay or Vaconia.
Were those all of your questions,
Yeah,
Ian?
that's it.
So his presentation is complete?
Yeah. For me.
Yeah, one good.
Okay. So I'll attempt my best to address these questions. So your first question is, let's address this point of asking your questions and then not getting a direct answer immediately as you you've identified. Yes, I did get your questions. I also saw what was happening, and then I wanted to make sure that when we answered your questions, we answered them completely, because what we saw was there was a lot of information that was being put out piecemeal as it was being received on a Facebook page, with many of that information being misrepresented, with many inappropriate comments. So what we want to do, and what I've asked the staff to do, is put together all your questions. We can go through them and vet them appropriately, so that when they are an official or in position, they are complete and are not going to be interpreted in the wrong way. So yes, that is taking a little bit of time. We have had other challenges at the same time. We've had a budget during that same period of time that we were working on that had to be completed, which is legislatively required. So that was some priorities. We also had a significant fire that had an impact on some of those same resources that are having to be devoted. We don't have a plethora of resources in the RM to be able to deal with those, and I've asked my staff to deal with that and work on it. In the meantime, we are exploring it. One of the things I also need to identify here, I'll come to answering these questions related with this, but the funding has been identified in the 2025 budget to deal with the Baconia well. It was put aside, and when a proper solution was being able to be negotiated between us and the province of Manitoba, which we have been working over, whether you like the process or how we followed it or what the province did, I apologize, but I can't fix that for you, sir. But what I can tell you is that we have come to a solution, which we did communicate, that looks like we can have a pale fill with a new well without having to chlorinate the water. And some of the information that you're quoting was information that was piecemealed from pieces of information over the years, which looked at solutions, and then it was turned down because the province of Manitoba said, if you do this, then it requires chlorination. If you do that, it requires this. So during that time is where we ended up today. We are looking at providing a complete solution that can hopefully best meet those requirements. It may not meet everyone's requirements, but that will come forward as a report, as I've stated, and will be addressed at a public meeting. And when that report is ready, we're anticipating it to come soon. I've already instructed staff to go out there and take a well drilling company and verify and make sure that we can be able to produce a new well that is artesian well that can function the same way as the new one, and that'll require some testing and analysis. That's what we're starting now that we have some time available to do those kinds of things. We've said we are going to address this. We've also had some very good communications with the province of Manitoba, who have told us that they are prepared to work with us as long as we're showing progress. Now that we both have a resolution and a solution that we can both agree to. So, dealing with your first question, already have access to aquifer. Why are we providing that? Well, the situation is when you allow for densification, it has an impact on how many wells you can drill. And so further, the more densification is available, the more there's a requirement. There's also challenges. The water that was in East Selkirk was ordered to be changed over by the province of Manitoba. So you can go back and take a look at previous reports where there was a boil water advisory, and hence it was put in place. During that time, that cost was completely put on those residents, not on all other municipal ratepayers. It was not put on north or south ratepayers, it was put on East Selkirk ratepayers. So a water treatment plant had to be built, along with a sewage lagoon, because they had to have piped water and sewer due to ground contamination. And because of that, that water system became, and there was a need to look at expanding that. As part of that, with the development planning, yes, there's been some growth in the north, and there's been some growth in the south. There's also more potential for growth in the south, and there's been many people that have come forward. Is there opportunities in the north? Yes. And the RM went forward with that, sir, and went to put in sewage, a sewer line and water line as a discussion. We went and did an engineering study, and many of the same people that are on your Facebook page that are fighting for this specifically came out against this, including Mr. Livingston, who stood outside and gave different information to the residents than we were providing inside to all the residents as to what we were intending, which was finish a design study so that we can eventually bring water and sewer to expand capacity in Grand Marais. And there was no immediate cost to any individual. This was just a study, and then it was only going to initially go to the businesses that were looking for it. Okay, so why to the residents 13 kilometers away? And maybe if you could repeat your second question.
The second one? Why aren't current and future residents of Lockport and South St. Clement expected to drive 13 kilometers to the East Selkirk truck fill when in the 2022 decision paper,
I hear what you said. So to address that question, sir, it wasn't why aren't current, there wasn't a need for people in Lockport and to come to East Selkirk. There was a significant amount of money that was invested in infrastructure that was here. Where was the closest opportunities for expanding on that infrastructure to be able to get the money back from those utilities? Every one of those individuals are going to pay, will be paying and have paid their fair share. A detailed analysis was completed for all the monies that were spent on this. The $4 million for the water lines that were going in, including the anticipated future costs, excuse me, including the future costs for the water reservoir, the well fields, all those costs were collected together, determined how many residents would be able to connect, and then an actual connection fee was determined. There are new developments happening here, and we're getting funding all the time from those individuals. A small piece of land was sold next door to here, and that land was bought by a developer that went out from, we went out as an RFP to look at somebody could bring in housing that would support this area for seniors type housing and multifamily housing. They're building 56 units here. I just received a check for $190,000 that they're paying for their fair share for the first phase of that project. That's part of the recovery of all those funds. And so the anticipation is over the 20 years, and usually you have a longer lifespan for underground infrastructure, that all that money would be returned back to the utility. That's the intent for both sewer and water. And so that's why. So it has nothing to do with requiring them to drive any kilometers. It was where did it make sense to do it. If there are residents out by Baconia Well that are willing to pay and connect and pay for those connection fees and the cost to take water all the way up there or build a water treatment plant, certainly they are going to look at it. We did try to look at it. And in 2020, it was just before the election.
Yeah, 2020.
Because one person ran against that specifically, representing that, and many people supported it. And so, as the RM, we come out with the solutions, but at the end of the day, if the residents are not interested in it, we're not looking at it. Because it's a significant investment and there's a cost associated with it. We also looked at the same thing with the Baconia Well. There were costs associated. Now we have to recover it. Do we have to set it up as a utility? Or keep it as a free service? And that's part of what council has been wrestling with for all this time. At this point, we think we have a solution that will provide something almost identical to what was there before and at the same price, which is amazing. But anyways, why is the RM looking at the south and not the north? Well, I think I just explained that to you, sir. And not spending $60,000 in 2022. I think I explained that earlier, sir, which was, that was an estimate amount of one report of multiple processes that went on. I know you've requested for everything and anything associated with this, but that's going to take some time for us to collect all that information. And as I've said, we have, and we'll commit to providing the information, but some of it will take time. Because I will not authorize information that will be sent from this office that will be then used on other media and misrepresented. That's why we continue to recognize people.
Can I speak? I ask questions.
Can you let our CAO finish, please, Ian? And then you'll have an opportunity if you have more questions.
Okay, so as a part of a public hearing, you'll have one more opportunity because this is not supposed to be a debate, sir, so I answered your questions. And so as part of this, I'll finish up, and then if council so wishes, they can allow you to ask some further questions to the chair. I'm done.
You're done yours?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead, Ian.
He's sitting here saying that I'm putting stuff on social media. I asked, first time on your social media, and I got reply in a private email, and I showed it to him in Grand Rapids. It wasn't me that started this, it was you guys. Look at your Facebook page. Are my questions answered? No. You want to see my email? Do you remember at the meeting when I showed it to you? When I asked about the survey? Well, the survey was mailed. Me and Susie own 3 properties. We didn't get one. Then you're telling me, oh no, it was online. I said, this is the kind of information I get? And then you sit here and you criticize me. I never asked you about sewer and water. I asked you about the Baconia well. You're turning it into the sewer and water in Grand Rapids. You want to get into that debate with me? We can get into that.
Ian,
Madam Chair?
Ian, please. This is a public hearing.
I understand that, Debbie, but the thing is, I'm not going to sit here and take abuse. I pay the wages for the people here. I'm not going to take abuse from anybody. I'm being civil. He needs to be civil.
Do you think I should be, Madam Mayor, if I could answer something?
Sure.
Do you think I should be sitting civil and not respond while people on your Facebook are creating slanderous comments about myself?
Not me.
You're communicating directly with them, not, this is your Facebook page that you are the webmaster on?
I'm not slandering you. I never slandered you.
Regardless, I'm not saying you did.
Okay, I'm gonna try and bring this back together. I know that there are a lot of comments on Facebook that are not very good comments from anybody. I do not look at Facebook anymore, only for that reason, and I think there's others sitting around this table. Facebook should not be used to call out people and say that we're doing things wrong. If you have an issue with what the municipality or what council is doing, put it in writing, send it to the office, send it to myself, and it will be addressed. Facebook, to me, is not a platform to get questions answered.
I've sent it out there.
Okay, go ahead, Councilor Boulanger.
We will not only refer to Facebook, but I'm just going to say in general, social media. Whatever platform you want to call it, Facebook, Instagram, whatever it is, social media in general is a dissemination of wrong information. And when everybody goes on it, sits there and does this, easy to sit behind a keyboard and easy to forward on information that is false. If you want the proper information, do not garner your information from social media sites. Come to the RM, sit down in the CEO's office and get the horse's mouth information factually. That's all I'll say. Social media is not a place where residents should be garnering information because in most cases, people believe it.
Did you not get the email about the meeting?
I was not in the country.
That's not
I
my
would have
fault.
loved to have been there.
You're saying to, you're criticizing, you know, because we have a Facebook page. People are fed up. Okay? I asked for a meeting with the council. I still don't have a reply.
But
Is it hard?
Where did you ask for that meeting? Where was that?
Probably a month ago.
No, where? How?
I sent all you guys emails.
I will have to look back.
I think as Mr. CEO said, Madam Chair, is that he wanted the information to come out once and once only,
Right.
and not to be spread on social media sites. Just, we'll give you the information you need, but we'll give it to you in one chunk.
That was after the grant, when I ran into the ground. There was emails before that.
Okay, is there anything else that you wanted to say at this point in time, Ian?
No.
Okay, thank you very much for your presentation. And as our CAO has said, Yes, it is going to take us some time to get some of that information together, but whatever you were looking for, you will receive. I would say probably not for at least 3 weeks, if not longer.
It is 2 to 3 weeks.
2 to 3 weeks.
But any, hopefully we've answered any questions related to social, with the public hearing.
Does anybody else want to ask a question towards?
I'm
certainly
getting to
register
that,
and-
yeah.
Thank you.
Sue, were you gonna say something, or?
No, just, I wasn't sure whether I would want to speak for this.
Okay.
so-
Yeah, that's fine, thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, if you did want to come forward and ask a question or have your say, I need to have your name and your address for the record, please.
First name Patrick, last name Noel, like Christmas in French. 2 dots over the E, word perfect 5.1 will get you there.
And what is your location? Where?
17 South Street,
17
Marais.
South?
South Street, Grand Marais.
Okay. Thank you.
First time here. Don't do what you do, the process is new. But as our new PM said, he's new to everything he's doing. He'll make mistakes, and he'll look to everybody else for guidance. Well, that's the spirit. Just a basic question around, I think in perspective of the Beconia well, with regards to the large water issue in your region, which is massive, and millions in cost. I understand the process that you're going through. It looks like that there is a resolve amongst the many decision making. You're also dealing with the bureaucracy of the Waterworks Board in Winnipeg. They have their structure, their process. You have yours with us. So there's got to be a resolution. I don't think anybody here is coming to create any conflict, any argument, to question where this is going to lead. I think with regards to the comment on Facebook or other social media, our own government and some of our news broadcasters use the same social media. Is there some misinformation from them? You can determine that. I have some questions as to what is valid and what is leading or misleading. So we can leave that there. I think the process for Facebook in our little area is basically grassroots communication. Some people have taken it upon themselves, myself included, since I'm retired too, to pursue it. We live there. We love living there. We use the well. The water is great tasting, clean, never had any ill effects, never had any reports from yourself or any other waterworks jurisdiction that there's an issue with its clarity, its ability to carry whatever would be ill in any water. So that's not the issue. I think what I did read too was there was an order from the Waterworks Board that it would be permanently closed in September 25th. If you could correct me on that, because what I'm hearing from my colleagues here, the other residents, is there's a certain amount of information people are getting. You mentioned yourself that you were going to pursue other ways of making communication easier. I think you just gave an example of where it got clouded, and it needs to be furthered, whether it's through Facebook or any other, but the information is really incumbent upon you as our counselors to give us that information so we can bring our input back to you. We're not getting that. I think there's a sense of frustration in the community. That's why you're getting all your negative comments. I don't think people want to do that on purpose. I think part of the communication and in the content of those frustrations is give us some answers. Give us some, yes, it might be this, it might be that. I caught some of the answers from the Waterworks. I think people, myself included, it's June now. Some of you are going on holidays. I don't know what the process is for you going on holidays or the meetings being either the same every 2 weeks or cut down to once a month, I don't know. Like I said, I'm new, so I'll look for information for you to come back to me. But people are now wondering, wait a minute, people are gonna be off on holidays, yourself included, things tend to get put to rest, like our people in Ottawa, okay? But we need some answers before September 25th so that we don't have to race after each other for what's going on and when it's gonna happen. Thank you.
Go ahead, and I know that we have
I'll address some of your
Yeah.
comments and questions as well. Yes, I agree with you, we can improve. We always will work to try to improve. When we encountered this problem, we did try our best to communicate. We put it into various different methods. Some people saw them, some people didn't. It's been an ongoing battle and a challenge. The only time it really became at a hand, and I think in many cases when we sent out mailings, we sent out to the same addresses we sent our taxes in, but we sent it out as a survey, and somehow some people claimed that they got the taxes, but they never got the other mailings. But regardless, there were others that were able to see the mailings from other communities and participated. So it was a challenge. We continued to go through this challenge, and council had made the decision that we'll continue to work with the province because it was escalating at different levels. So we would come back with a solution that would require, because it would create a different scenario. Well, if we put this in, and what if we did it as a truck fill? Well, if it's a truck fill, it requires this type of disinfection. So then we went and investigated all those. And as we're investigating this, most people thought it was just a municipality issue, but it was really an issue with the province of Manitoba. Then the province finally, after all this period, which the council had said, give us an order, which order came out this year. And the province said, okay, we're going to now issue this order as opposed to voluntarily close it. Council didn't feel that they wanted to voluntarily close it or look at losing that capacity with no solution in hand that was viable for the community as a whole. And so when that letter came out that it was going to be closed and there was an order, that I think hit a lot further at home with a lot more of our users than anything else in the past. And that was expected. So based on that, we created additional communications. I don't know if you've seen our communications, but we created the Coney Well website. In there, we created a bunch of videos to help. So supplied as much of the information that we have that's considered publicly or could not further confuse the issue. And then we created some videos to help people see a little bit of podcast in another way. And then in there, we also told them, so we went and attempted, council had asked to seek legal advice. Legal advice was sought. Legal advice said, well, maybe you can look at just declaring it as a non-potable source, and then they would allow you to just use it and put up the necessary precautions and allow people to use it at own risk kind of scenario, because council and most of the residents that have been using it, as well as maybe even some of the regulars, felt that the water is safe. It's a requirement under regulations that they're following, and people are following different rules, different responsibilities. So with that, we were able to finally get the communication that there was this provincial order. Then I think the direction changed, and what ended up happening was a resident or a non-resident, an agent or a representative came to the office and said, I'm going to hold a public gathering personally for all the local residents, and I'm going to tell them what's going on. And I said, if you're going to do that, here's some information that we have, which was the same information we had on our website. That was shared. There was a lot more residents that showed up on that than actually visited our website. And after that, more people started seeing our website and started looking at that information. Then that same person scheduled a second follow-up meeting. The province had been involved with us now, and we've been working because there was a deadline now, a real deadline that was looming. And with that, the province said that we'd like to go down there because many people were contacting the provincial agencies as well to sort of clear the air. We found out that a day or two before that day's event. And we said, we'll go with them to give them support. two councillors and myself attended that with the province to be able to answer some of those questions. It wasn't pre-planned or anything, it was just a reaction, but it was really run by someone else as a meeting. And so we went there, explained the same situation. What I said there was also put on a video and information that we responded back. If you look at our website, we say we have a potential solution to come forward with that will resolve this to being a pale fill as it was originally intended and to be able to still meet all the provincial requirements and not require chlorination. Because that was another big factor in a lot of things. And that's a cost. And then you have to try to recover that cost. So that was communicated there, maybe not the best. I still struggle, it's not my first language. And with that, we move forward with pushing forward with that. Now we're looking at doing that, but before we come back, we have to have all the answers because as government, we get criticized if we just put up information piecemeal. So we're waiting for all those informations and we said we would meet that. In that same time, with this deadline looming, the province has said as long as you continue to meet and you're doing something that's tangible, we'll be there. And that's what we're doing, looking at doing things tangible. Council passed the resolution. Council had put away money all these years, $350,000 without knowing what would be the cost. This year we have a much more definitive cost, somewhere around $150,000. If more is needed, council will then make those decisions. That's needed to be able to do this, and that's been put in the budget this year. So yes, the money is there. And yes, we are planning to do it. And yes, as a matter of fact, I'm sure the province might even look at the transcripts of today's meeting and then see that we are looking at doing something tangible. We've been in regular communications with them. The people that are working there are trying to help as best as they can to stay within the rules and regulations under which they must govern. That's where we are.
Can I respond to what you just said in a positive manner? I heard everything you said. Appreciate it. I think I'm on top of what you said you're doing, so I am aware of that. And like you said, with the Waterworks Department, that's where you've got to follow, take a lead, and complement. So that's a resolution between those two departments, yourself and one.
Correct.
You talked about social media. You use social media to get your message across, so it can be positive, not always negative. What I would encourage you as councilors too, is there anybody, I'm sorry, again, you informed me, but is there anybody specifically allotted to our area around the Beacon Wall? Who would it be? Is there a councilor?
That would be, there are three, we only have 2 wards in our municipality, so there are 3 councillors that look after Ward 2, which is where the Beconia Well is.
Okay.
So it is Councillor David Horbis sitting next to me here, Councillor David Sutherland on the other side, and Councillor Robert Boulanger. And their numbers are on the website, so if you ever needed to get
I'll be on the website now, thank you.
If you ever needed to get a hold of anybody or the office, they're all on the website, all the numbers are there.
I appreciate that. What I wanted to encourage you to do too as councilors, like I said, I wasn't aware of the 2 days. It's probably good, right? So now that I know, what I would encourage you to is instead of us having to pursue information, whether it be through a website or calling in, and I think I heard an email that took a bit of a lengthy time to respond to, is there not something in your process, in the council's process, for you to go out to your wardship people and offer input, what's going on, what are your concerns, meet with them personally? I understand you said you went with 2 other councilors. Okay?
The 2 days.
I mean, I'm an informed person. I mean, was there a public outlet in people in areas about this ahead of the meeting?
There was, as I mentioned, the meeting was scheduled by a private individual, and they were run.
Okay.
And she was coordinating, I don't know,
Okay.
the
I can
communication she was
appreciate
doing.
that, but you didn't spearhead the meeting. What I'm asking is why not spearhead that information out to the people around the county?
Well,
You could have easily,
yeah, sure.
May I
If I could
finish?
just say something.
May I finish first?
Sure, go ahead, sure.
The suggestion is maybe the three of you who are responsible for that area, along with the CAO, because he's got numbers, he's got figures, he's got that responsibility, fiscal responsibility, to make the books match or he's in trouble. I take that seriously, and I think you do too. I've heard that at least. So why not have that, set it down at community center, down at our area, invite everybody to come in with their questions, and finally resolve it. We're talking about a lengthy period of time where I think you were saying there was misrepresentation of, and you were saying it too, of facts and historical. So why not have that meeting from the residents themselves to ask the questions, and clarify it, all of that? Why not? Why not come out to your constituents? It's all in the spirit of cooperating, resolving issues, and not getting into a conflict situation because of it taking too much of a lengthy process without your constituents having a proper informing
Agreed.
decision making.
Who determines the timeline?
Pardon me?
Who determines the timeline?
The timeline?
As to when these meetings should occur
That's
and
you.
what?
That's
Okay,
you.
Thank you.
Whoever
So
wants
that's-
to come,
No,
comes. But I didn't know.
But excuse me, sir. Thank you. But that, many of this has happened in the last month and a half, 2 months,
Yeah.
where there's been additional pressure put on because of people recognizing this.
Mhm.
We've made attempts in the past to try to communicate to sometimes maybe not the best attempts, but whatever the case is, it wasn't working. So now, if people are saying, we want you to have the meeting, and if we're not ready to have that meeting, because we don't have all the information in hand to be able to, and have it signed with the senior levels of government saying, this is the plan that you shall adopt, then it makes it even more difficult for us as a government agency to make a presentation. So yes, that is always the intent. But if somebody comes in and says, I want you to do the meeting now, and immediately, and we're not ready, then who's responsible for that timeline?
I understand and I agree with what you're saying. However, I believe the issue started when? Was it 2020?
The issue started 2020. The actual significant impact and the significant, there's been attempts, there's been meetings held, it was put on agendas, there were things that were communicated, it was put in newsletters, things like that. Some people didn't see them, whatever the situation was, until just recently, until the letter that was received in February of this year from the province of Manitoba did all this communication get up to a higher level. And that everybody's asking. So what you're saying is, but only since February have we been able to have these more definitive discussions with the province of Manitoba as well.
So we're getting somewhere, aren't we?
Correct. And what precipitated that? The order. So yes, there was a lot of talk from 2020 to now. And yeah, some people would say we should have acted then. I'm not sure that we would have had the same solution then.
You didn't have the directives, did you?
Pardon?
You didn't have the directives from the waterworks. They gave you some resolution directives.
They gave us some specific
So they
directives.
took it quite well too, didn't they?
Well, I wouldn't blame them as well.
I'm not talking about blame, I'm talking about the process.
Yeah, sometimes the process is people act when there's an order.
People will act when there's a concern that's growing and strengthening.
Correct.
So we did our part because it grew. Maybe not the way you would have appreciated, I get it. But there is a concern and now there's an order. So where do we go from there? You're going to resolve the issues as to the directives they saw, I get it. But again, with regards to that and any other issues, I still don't get a lot of, I would like to see councillors coming out to our area. I'm not demanding, I'm just saying, just set it up during the year to come out. If it's winter and your truck's not working, do it in the summer.
Okay, I'm gonna try and bring it back in here, seeing as we
Very
are in a
much. Thank
public
you very much.
hearing.
Yeah,
So I
thank
have
you.
a couple of councillors that do want to comment, and I guess, kind of to your point, council members do go to various locations within the municipality, okay? Most of the time, we go on an invitation, whether it be to the Gull Lake Picnic or the Grand Marais Santa Parade, or, you know, different functions. We haven't been in the habit of going to any community to announce something or just speak to the people. Like, I know some of the counselors have been up in different areas, and they stop by and they speak to the residents, but not with a specific purpose in mind, just a general conversation. I've done it myself. I've been in Grand Marais and stopped at the local grocery store or the chip stand and done the same thing. So, but I'm going to turn it over. There are a couple of counselors that want to comment here, so I'm going to start with Councillor Horbis. Go ahead.
So I guess what's frustrating about this whole thing for me, because I live in the area, I've taken water from there. Years back, this well, there was a private owner. He was going to shut the well down. So the municipality, I believe it was Kenny, he said, let's buy it as the RM. We're going to buy this well so everybody can still get water here. So that was a great thing the RM did. Otherwise, that well would have been closed a long time ago. So the RM took this on. RM takes this on. All of a sudden, the government comes in and says, hey, you're responsible now. Somebody's going to go there, take this fill site, hook a hose up to it. They're going to touch it there. Water's going to come out. Somebody's going to get sick. People are dying, you know. So this escalates, moves on. And then here we are. They're going to shut it down, you know. Every councillor around here has been fighting to keep this well open. And you say, why don't we come to meetings and say anything? Because it's a negotiation and it's closed with the government. We can't come out and say something that we know something. We're not supposed to. Because it's closed investigation. Like, they're looking into this. And then after that's all said and done, like Deepak said, we'll come out. We'll have a vote here. We'll vote for this, and we'll come and tell the public. It's frustrating, I know it is, because people are asking me. I've got tons of phone calls about this well thing. I told everybody, go after the province, phone the province, get together, organize something, go after the province. And a lot of people did. And that's what stimulated that the province came out and initiated all this too. So it kind of brought it to a head, which is good. Because it's been going on for, I don't know, years.
Okay, I'm going to move on.
Sorry.
Go ahead, Councillor Belanger.
Thank you.
My question is to Mr. Hailstone, and I didn't get your first name, sir.
Patrick.
Patrick. I know that there was a lot of work put into really good detailed information that the RM put out, both on our website. The presenter that Mr. CEO was talking about that put the two meetings together, he made sure that she had the factual information. He directed her to go to our website. He directed her to tell the people at the meeting that this is where the factual information is. So if you want real factual information, go see what the RM produced and put together. Some podcasts, it was a lot of information. And my question is, has Mr. Hailstone or Patrick actually seen any of that information that the RM put out it was a litany of it?
Robert, I've asked for the original letters, and I get sent back to the 2022 letter. So you want me to send you the emails?
No,
They're coming from your...
No, hang on. My question is not you. My question was, of all the information that I said was put on the website for many, many months, all the factual information, all the podcasts, there was a lot of time and effort put in by administration. My question was, have you, your wife, or Patrick actually seen any of that information?
I go on there all the time.
Okay, so you saw all the
Yes.
precursor information that we put out,
Yes.
all the detailed sort of information about what was happening and what we're going to be doing as a council. You saw.
You know, it's the same thing, Robert. You want to criticize about Facebook, you have a Facebook.
No, I'm not.
I go on, listen to me. I go on there, I ask the question, I'll show you right now. If you want me to show you the email where I've asked the
Ian,
question.
I'm not getting in a debate. My question was a yes or no. Did you see all the information?
Yes, I have.
Okay, that's all. Thank you.
Yes.
That's all I wanted to know.
Yep.
Thank you. We'll leave it at that.
Councillor Sutherland, did you have something you wanted to add?
Yes, as far as meeting with the constituents, all of the cottage owners associations up there were invited, Boulder Bay, Island Beach, Lakeshore Heights. We get invites, Gull Lake. So it's not that we don't go up and meet with the when we get an invite, we meet with these certain groups. So we're up there. Maybe you don't go to the, if there's something going on, but if you don't know about it, I guess, like, it's the Cottage Owners Association, we'll put it on. One second. And back to what Councillor Horvath said. It's very important, like this, that was a private well.
Mm-hmm.
And I would just wish everybody would understand that we made the decision to buy that. We didn't have to. It was a private well. The person that owned that property was not going to let people access. So this is where the whole problem started. We bought, everything worked good. As soon as it's a municipality that takes it over, now the government steps in, eventually the Office of Drinking Water and the province got wind that, no, it's a municipal, so everybody wants to cover their ass.
Sure.
So, okay, now what if something happens, somebody gets sick, as Councillor Horvath said, so it's not as if this has been going, I forget when we bought it, it's
a number of years ago.
Number of years ago, and everything was good until the province found out. So, yes, things have been going on for quite some time, but it's not that we've been, and then now that we've got the order to do something, like with this well, this is where we're at. And to have a meeting, as Deepak says, to have a meeting now, and all you do is confuse things. Because people go to that meeting, and we have to have the definitive answers, once we know from the province exactly what's going to happen. But we are going to, put the new well, and it's not, this is not going to happen. But that's, it's been a long process.
Can I just respond to all the councillors?
Well, you know what, we are in a public hearing, and Viconia Well really wasn't part of it, but I'll let you make your comment, and then I'm closing the public hearing, and we're gonna proceed with our meeting.
Very fair, thank you. I heard what all three councillors had to say, as well as Deepak.
Deepak's good.
And I appreciate it. Like I said, the issue here isn't to cause conflict, to stir up arguments. It's to resolve the issue. And I know, Mayor, that you didn't want to, the whole meeting wasn't to specifically get into our little tiny Viconia well issue. But I want to stress to you that the people that live in that area think it's bigger than what you might think, and the responsibilities that the council has. That's what I have to say. I appreciate what you have to say by saying you come down and you intend, quote unquote, when invited. It's not what I meant. The communication goes both ways. Come down and announce yourselves that you're having a meeting for us to attend, not for us to invite you to a special meeting like a Christmas party or this or that or a corn fest, etc. I wouldn't mind having all three councils and Deepak come to my home for coffee and a chat. Not possible, too busy, I get it. Then organize something within our community that brings everybody en masse once a year. That's about it. So that the communication goes both ways. It's not an invitation to our cute celebration. You have an input, you have a coffee, make a speech and leave. It's genuine input from your end to our community. How you want to arrange that, it's none of my business, not my concern. But I'd like to see more input from our councillors. You're part of us. We want to be part of you. Let's resolve it together.
Thank you for that. And with that, I am going to ask for a resolution to close the public hearings for this afternoon. I don't believe there's any other comments, so if I could have that resolution, please, Deepak.
Just 1 second. Where's that place number? Resolved that the public hearing for bylaw 6, bylaws dash 2025, bylaw 7 dash 2025, bylaw 8 dash 2025, bylaw 9 dash 2025, bylaw 10 dash 2025 be closed in the regular session and council will be reconvened.
Madam Mover, please, Councillor Boulanger, Councillor Spicer seconds. Any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor, opposed, and that is carried. Yes, we can take a 5-minute recess, please. Can you